Hello, I am Simulator Dirk and welcome back to New Zealand. We are in Auckland and we are at the far end of the New Zealand Midland route. This is where we finished the last episode, and it's actually nice to be able to see the landscape around because it was rather dark when we got here on the last episode. Now in this episode, the previous two episodes, 61 and 62 of Simulator Dirk Train Simulator, and also episodes 48 and 49, we feature the Auckland diesel multiple unit that was built in Australia, used in Perth for a while, then sent over to New Zealand and then refurbished to look like this in the 2000s. This is not part of the New Zealand pack, the New Zealand Midland rather, but I'm using this because this is a New Zealand train and it's the only New Zealand route, so why not use it? So let's have a look around at the scenery before we go in the train, and then I'll explain why I'm actually doing this episode, which I didn't necessarily plan to do, but here we are. On the next episode, I'm hoping to show you the scenarios and the trains that are included in this pack. So I should point out that the railcar is modelled how it would look in Auckland in the early 2000s. The route itself, however, is from 1968, so a different era, certainly. So let's go in the cab. Now, we'll see here that we have the red signal. Now, we're in a yard situation, we're going on to a single line, and if you just look at that, you'll think, okay, red signal, let's contact the signaller. Request to pass signal at danger denied. So I'm thinking, okay, there's something coming this way, possibly, and it will go onto the loop line, and then once it arrives, we can go. But, as I found out in recording previously, if I go to the map and I find my train, we're heading to Arthur's Pass, which we saw on the last episode. So if we go down the single line section here, centre buyer. Now here we are. Now if we change this set of points, we should now change both ends of the points. So now we should see, and we have the signal is clear. So our lights are on. Let's give a bit of horn. Our reverser in forward. And for our Kiwi mates, let's give it some jandle. So yeah, let's give it some jandle indeed. 45 mile an hour. I did mention in previous episodes that I thought it might have been in metric. However, of course, I didn't take into account when the map was actually modelled on 1968, the pre-metric era in Australia and New Zealand. Now, I did mention on the last episode that I wanted to show you this section of the map in the reverse direction, the way we're going now, and it also helps that I'm able to show it to you in daylight. Now the reason I'm able to show you it in daylight rather than at night, which is when we arrived in the previous episode, I reached out to NZTS, who is behind this map, and I said, I'm having some problems. I left Springfield in summer at 9 a.m. By the time that I went through the route and got to the other end, it was dark. What's going on? So to summarize, it's actually not a problem with the route, but this is me paraphrasing. In Train Simulator, in the underlying engine of Train Simulator, things are basically set up for the Northern Hemisphere. With this map being a possible exception and not many others, everything in Train Simulator world is in the Northern Hemisphere. I would have thought that if you were wanting to select 9 a.m. somewhere, doesn't matter where, that it would be 9 a.m. local time. However, because of how the underneaths are wired up, and this is only something that affects quick drive, I've been told. I haven't done any of the scenarios yet. I was actually going to be doing a scenario for this episode, but this is an important piece of information. So setting it for 9 a.m. departing Springfield in summer, according to game time, was actually 9 p.m. So hence the reason why it got rather dark rather quickly. Now, depending on where you are in Australia and New Zealand, I'm on the east coast of Australia. Depending on what part of summer you're in, you can expect sunset around 8 p.m, twilighty after that to about 8:30, and then it gets dark after that. But usually by 9 o'clock, it's dark no matter what. So what I've had to do is that I've had to set my game time, the time that I wanted to start on Quick Drive, I had to set it for 9 p.m. and therefore fooling the underlying engine and saying to it, no, it's actually 9 a.m. So I should reach Arthur's Pass in 11 miles time in about another 25 minutes. And if my theory is correct as it was told to me, I should still be in daylight, even though game time says 9:10 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. Now, apparently this is different. The way that it works with the scenario is different, and it's more local, and it's more the local time, so you can set it for 9 a.m. and that will work. So I thought that it was important for me to explain and demonstrate that before we get to the scenarios. And it's certainly, I certainly got a quick response. It was in the same afternoon. It was a matter of minutes really when I had a response in relation to what's going on. So I dare suggest that the quick fix for now would be to basically reverse the game time. So if you're looking for 9 a.m. 0900, early morning summer, set your time for 2100 in game time when you set up Quick Drive, and you'll be sweet. This only applies, from what I've been told, in Quick Drive. So any scenario that you set up yourself or any scenario that you do that's included will be fine. I should point out, as I've pointed out before, that this train is not part of the scenario, and it appears as though the train isn't the problem. The map itself isn't the problem. It appears as though it's an underlying thing from, to paraphrase the way that I sort of understand it, the engine of Train Simulator under the bonnet And this is one of the things that happens because there's not many southern hemisphere routes, and this is probably the first time that it's really come up as an issue. So while I was trying to record previously, I thought, what would happen in Alaska? Because famously in Alaska, in summer, you basically can have up to 24 hours of sunlight. And conversely, in winter, you basically get 24 hours of darkness. Now, I do have an Alaskan route on my computer, and we have featured the Alaska route before. So what I should do, if I remember, after we do this New Zealand series, we go to Alaska and we try leaving wherever in Alaska on the route. I don't think it would matter where. You leave 9 AM in summer, so therefore, or actually what we probably should do, if you set the route for say 10 PM in summer compared to 10 PM in winter, what the difference, if any, would be. You know, something like that. And would that be an issue? But a very, very interesting one. Thanks to the NZTS crew. Fantastic so far to see the amount of support that they've received, and also the amount of technical support that they've been giving back in relation to settings or whatever. I haven't changed any of my settings, so it'll be interesting to see. On the next episode, I am planning to do one of the scenarios. So we'll just continue on. We're heading to Arthur's Pass in about 8 miles time. That's about 20 minutes because we are starting to go uphill now. We're coming up to Otura. Now we're going to have to watch the signals up here, because we are starting to get restrictive signals. And it will give us a good opportunity to have a look at this area, because we didn't get much of a chance to see it in daylight on the previous episodes for the reasons that I've just explained. But so far, in my limited time looking around, there's been some very positive comments in relation to this route, and it sort of reminds me of the Japanese routes that I feature in the introduction. So we should have a look around our... Whoops. I'm trying to line up just to have a look around the station briefly. Actually, what I should probably do is move up a little bit. We'll get back in the cab. So we'll just crawl up to the signal. Now, I should have done some more reading about the New Zealand signalling system, because for me, being here in the part of Australia where I'm from, you can't have a top red without a little green one unless it's a low speed. That to me is slightly illogical. Now, have I indeed gone the wrong way? I don't think so. Luckily, there's lots of different... If you want to change the points yourself and say head up to the yard there and then come back, you can do that. But I'm not going to. I'm going to keep on going towards Arthur's Pass, and we are heading in the right direction. So it's going to be a slightly shorter episode on this occasion compared to the usual length episodes. I just want to get to Arthur's Pass and we'll have a little bit of a look-see around there. Certainly getting to see a lot more of the route now compared to what we got to see in the last episode when we're going through here, because it was dark. So next week, Train Simulator episodes come out on Thursdays when I've got content available. Next week, next Thursday, you'll see the first of the New Zealand scenarios. I won't go into... I won't be pre-playing or anything like that, so I'm going to walk in totally blind and record what happens and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to practice anything like that. There probably won't be many videos around at this point of this route. And there are some times where I'll have a look at a video. That either Train Simulator Dovetail Games or someone else has put out, or another content creator's put out, and then I'll think, you know what, I really like that route. I might not have thought about that route, but there might be something about that route where I go, yeah, I really like that. And then I'll go out and purchase it myself, and then I'll make a recording about it. Now, clearly with this route, especially considering that, you know, I'd been banging on for a while about, and quite a few people in the Train Simulator community have been banging on about no Australian or New Zealand routes. For instance, Japan, that we've seen in the opening credits, there's about 3 separate routes that you can buy on for Train Simulator, and that's pretty much it. You know, Japanese people, there's a lot of Japanese people who love trains. You know, you can go to video arcades and there will be Train Simulator arcade games in the arcades. In the Railway Museum near Tokyo that I went to a few years ago, there are train simulator, realistic train simulators that you can use in the Railway Museum. Railways are very popular in Japan, but when it comes down to getting them on Train Simulator, you don't see them You don't see them much. And so and I love Japan and I love Japanese railways, and if I see a Japanese route on Train Simulator, I'll go and buy it and I'll feature it here. And I have done on three separate occasions, and the current credits that you saw at the start of this episode feature a Japanese diesel multiple unit. And that's cool. I've actually purchased, I don't know if I'm going to make this a series on Simulated Earth or not, but there's a rather popular arcade / console game in Japan called Densa de Go. And basically it's arcadey, but the whole idea is to get in a Japanese metro train, for the lack of a better word, and drive it to the next station, obey the speed limits, stop at the right points, etc., and you get marked and scored accordingly. And it's been a very popular series in Japan for a long time. And I saw some videos online about it, because I'd, looking up Japanese train simulators and that sort of thing, and thinking, well, how can I get some more Japanese train simulator action? And the way that I could, one of the ways that I could do that was to buy Densa del Go. Now, the only gaming system, the only console that I have is an Xbox, and I seemingly can't get it for Xbox. And so what I managed to do was I found an online video where it showed somebody taking a dedicated Densa de Go controller. You plug it straight into the TV, and it looks like a Japanese version of Rail Driver, basically, where you can control the train using handles, not an actual controller or not the keyboard, and it just plugs straight into the TV. But when I saw the cost of that on Amazon Japan, I thought the postage was more expensive than the actual unit, so I thought, no thank you. Then I found it at playasia.com, and the postage was more reasonable. I think it came from Hong Kong, I want to say, off the top of my head without looking at it. But the price was more reasonable. The postage was more reasonable. I purchased it. It came in under 2 weeks. I haven't opened it yet. I'm waiting to have a competition with someone special when they come over to Erk Tower next time, and then by then I'll probably figure out how I can plug it into my computer and do a recording at the same time. I don't know if it's got longevity as a Simulated Erk series, because it's more arcadey, but I'd be driving Japanese trains that I can't drive in Train Simulator. We've one of the routes that I purchased was an electric train, but the other two were diesel multiple units, pretty much like you saw on the introduction. So we'll give it some full jandle now. It's 35 mile an hour. We're about 32 at the moment. We are going uphill, a 1 in 33 grade, a rather steep upgrade. So sometimes you got to think, okay, full throttle, is that going to be too much? And on this occasion, I think that full throttle is just a bit too much, whereas 2/3 throttle or 2-notch is holding the speed perfectly. It's just ran about 31 miles an hour in a 35 zone. As I've said repeatedly, and this is the same in the real world, it's a speed limit, not a speed target. And with your train management, if you think that 2/3 throttle or 2 notch is fine, and that keeps you just under 35 miles an hour in this case. Well, that's sweet. Whereas, you know, you go to 3 notch like we'll do now. Yes, it builds it up, and we'll see how fast we can go before we reach 35 or close to 35, and then we'll just take it back to 2. See, it's too hard to control, whereas 2 notch holds it fine. We'll just let the speed drop a little bit. So we go to 2 notch, and it holds it just under that 35 nicely. And we can probably stay in 2 notch for the rest of this grade, assuming that we're on the same gradient that we are now. So we can just keep it in 2 notch all the way. Then when we reach the top, when it levels out, well, we can change our approach. But there's no point, just to show you, like if we throttle off and we just go into release, or we go into idle, our speed's dropping greatly. We'll go into 1. There's not a lot there in 1 notch, but 2, two's a good spot. Now it'll take us a little bit of time to regain that speed that we just lost, but 2 notch for where we are for this grade and what the speed limit is pretty good. So there's lots of, if you're new to Simulated X, probably some of my Kiwi counterparts across the ditch have probably never heard of Simulated X before, and that's fine. A lot of people haven't. There's lots of different episodes. This is episode 63. Lots of different trains from around the world. Japanese trains. I've featured some Indian trains. There's another territory that's well and truly hasn't reached its full potential on Train Simulator. Speaking of countries that really love trains, and you know, an Indian train's more to the point. You know, it's a big market, and come to think of it, there's not really a lot of, and some of it's probably for semi-obvious political reasons, not a lot of content out of China either. But when you think about the populations of Japan, China, and India, and how unrepresented they are in trains in this Train Simulator universe, a lot more can happen. So we're 2.5 miles away now from Arthur's Pass. We'll have a quick look around Arthur's Pass, and then we will finish the episode. It'll be a nice short episode. I usually try and aim for about 60 to 90 minutes, but it just depends on the scenario and the route that I'm doing. Sometimes they go a bit harder, and sometimes they go a bit longer. But this one's going to be a little bit on the shorter side, because I want to start the scenario next episode. I don't know how long that scenario is going to take, and so I would rather do this shorter episode. I felt it was very important to explain what happened with the extra bit of information that I received. I thought that was important, and we'll go from there. Not a lot to see as we're going through this very long tunnel. We went through the tunnel towards the end of the previous episode in the opposite direction. We were going downhill, so we were using the automatic air brake, but this, we're just basically 2 notch all the way, and that's what we're doing at the moment. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's a rather steep upgrade. So I'm looking forward next week to starting the scenarios. From memory, there's about 10 That doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be 10 episodes, but we'll go through and we'll try some scenarios and see what happens. So I need to update the show notes at simulatorgaming.com. I know I've said that a fair bit. But all the episodes, playlists, etc. Simulator on YouTube. So just over a mile and a half to go now. We'll be there at Arthur's Pass in about 4 minutes time. At the bottom of the screen, we are coming to the tunnel portal. And it'll start to flatten out, and then we go into a 45 mile an hour zone briefly, and then we'll start to come into Arthur's Pass. So on episode 61 we went from Springfield to Craigieburn to Atkins on the previous episode, and now from Atkins to Arthur's Pass. Scenarios starting next week. Simulator Gaming on YouTube. I'd feel really good about some more subscribers. I don't have many compared to some of the other channels out there, and I do try and make an effort to bring you lots of different content from around the train simulator world. Also, Train Sim World, there's some there as well. Many more episodes here on Train Simulator because there's a lot more routes on Train Simulator, and I'm not even touching the surface of the routes that I have and the available routes as well. There's so many available routes that I haven't even thought about purchasing yet. There's just so many. It's like, where do you draw the line? So we can see that there's a signal at the end of the tunnel. Not quite time to shut off yet and react to that signal. We can keep going because we are still on the steep grade before it starts to flatten out shortly. So we'll just go back to release at this point. So we'll just go into idle. There's some daylight. How good is it to see some daylight? Got a red signal coming up here. We've got our brakes on. So we're bringing our speed down nicely. We may have to set some points again. There's basically this signal to go, then we'll be on the platform. We may have to change the points. Okay, am I going to pull up? I certainly hope so. We're pulling up nicely, maybe not hard enough, fast enough. I may have just passed that signal at danger. So what we'll do, we'll go behind the signal and then we'll set those points. To get into the main platform, and that's how simple it can be. Alright, we'll just apply the brakes and we'll go to our map. So where are we? So we're there. So There we go. So we're there. Hang on, let's just get out of here. As I said, I don't know New Zealand signalling. Oops, that's alright, I forgot I was in reverse. There we go, the map. So we're going to the, hang on, where am I? Oh, okay, that's the way it wants us to go. Okay, so we might be okay. And this is partly because I don't know the route either, so we'll see what happens when we get there. It's showing us that we're going the right way, and I double checked on the map, so it all looks okay. So we'll just whoops. Oh, there's a good screen cap for the show notes right at the end there. Arthur's Pass, 2,417 feet above sea level. So that's cool. You have reached the end of this quick drive scenario. Woo! So let's see, how did we do? Speeding twice. Oh, okay, so that wasn't a spad then. Okay, sweet. Improper use of the horn once. What? Improper use of the horn. Oh, that's your arse. Improper horn use. I think I only blew the horn when I started. And in many places, that's what you do when you start. Anywho, let's have a look. If we go into career mode now, we'll have a look at our, and you'll be able to see how many routes I've got on this thing. Midland, right, New Zealand. Okay, so we'll probably start at the beginning. A Midland picnic, part 1, 55 minutes. Take charge of a picnic train heading to Arthur's Pass for the day. There's 2 parts to that one. Then there's a frosty descent. Take train 146 from Arthur's Pass to Cass. Emergency fuel. An emergency delivery of fuel to Arthur's Pass. Shunting into the sunset. So we're doing some shunting and then heading for Auckland and beyond. And then Aitken's duty banker. Take a banker from Alteria to rescue a stalled train at Aitken's. Then we have a couple of other scenarios as well. So yeah, all looks good. So we've got probably one part there, one episode there, one episode there, one episode there, and then so probably 5 episodes at least, I would think. Anywho, I've been Simulator Dirk. You've been wonderful. Train Simulator content on Thursday when I have episodes available for you. We will see you next time. I've been Simulator Dirk. You've been wonderful. Don't forget, stay behind the yellow line and watch out for your improper horn use. Bye for now.